If I had a crystal ball and I could look into this crystal ball and tell you guys exactly where your business opportunities lie looking forward, what is working in the future, what is not working in the future, things that we should totally eliminate, things that we should totally start doing in order to see your business grow and flourish. Imagine how amazing that would be. Guys, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do have the next best thing. We've recently just launched our opportunity analysis, and the entire premise of this exercise is to help you guys understand where the holes in your bucket currently lie. Why is that important? Because we don't want to start filling a bucket that's leaking. Guys, for a limited time only, I'm going to be offering this as a free giveaway. It's $350, but for you site shedders, you're going to get it for free. You need to head across to tradie.wiki/grow and enter the code SiteShed to get it for nothing. Off the back of it, book a time to have a chat and we'll see where it takes us. We're looking forward to helping you and seeing where your opportunities lie. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Craig, welcome back to the Site Shed podcast.
Good to be back.
This is the second conversation that we have had. We haven't even named this series. What do you reckon we call it?
Oh, it's a great idea.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, I was about to say. Gee whiz.
I'd like to call it something about profit first, but in truth, it's sort of a bit bigger than that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it probably gets rounded up with the final one that we'll do is, it's around the whether it's the show. Might need to just rename some of them, but it's the profit and the people plan.
Anyway, the point is,
we'll work on it.
Craig's here to talk about money and finance, essentially. But in the first episode, guys, we were talking about money mindset and money archetypes. And for you guys that did not listen to that, go back and check it out. And the reason I say that is because a lot of what we're talking about here is understanding where your strengths and weaknesses lie within business, and specifically in these conversations on the financial side of your business. And I know many of you guys out there are familiar with personality profiling, disc profiling, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. But probably very few of you are familiar with like the money archetype profiling exercises. Very important for business, very important for personal life. Again, there's no right or wrong with these things. It's just about giving you a better understanding of, what your strengths and weaknesses are when it comes to the way you relate with money. So go check that episode out. In this episode, we're going to be talking about profit first optimization, and we're going to be talking a lot about the cash flow forecasting side of the profit first system. Now, for you guys that are not familiar with Profit First is a book. You can say the name of the guy that wrote it because I'm going to screw it up again.
Michalowicz.
Mike Michalowicz. An amazing book. I spoke about it in the last episode, so I'm not going to go back into it too much now. We also did do a podcast on Profit First back in 270. But anyway, you guys can go check that out yourselves. If you're not familiar with Profit First, I thoroughly encourage you to look into it. We'll probably dive a little bit more into this, Craig, in this episode, I suppose. But essentially, go read the book, okay? Because it will. It's an absolute game changer. It certainly was for me. Certainly has been for me and my businesses. And I'm certainly glad that I connected with that mindset and brought it on board, and then went and found Craig to help me implement. So following on from this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about how to use this same sort of mindset on the people side of your business in relation to recruitment, retention, and planning, strategizing, making sure you've got cash allocations for the next staff, team member, contractor, whatever it might be. So, Craig, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you coming in. You're from thehealthybusinesslab.com. So it's thehealthybusinesslab.com. Guys, all these links and stuff are going to be in the show notes. Head across to the siteshed.com and just type in Craig and it'll bring up one of these podcasts and you can go get access to all of these. And on his website, you'll also get access to some of these quizzes so you can go figure out what your money archetype is. There'll be a whole bunch of resources and things like that, which you can go dive into. So thanks for joining us again, mate.
Yeah, no, it's good to be here and talking through some great things that help us, help clients of ours as well. To ultimately, at the end of the day, we just want to optimize people's businesses because there's so many good businesses out there that have done so good and they've got, some great bones of businesses around there. But how can we sort of leverage them and sort of take things to the next level? Which for me, this is part of that next part of that profit first side of things that I know that you've been a great supporter and champion of, and having Katie on your show as well, and also many of the conversations that we've had as well. So to be able to go, well, what's the next layer and step for people that are out there that are either not implementing yet or are already implementing? How do they actually now take this to the next level to really get it humming along? It's always exciting to be delving into that.
Cool. And I really encourage you guys out there, like, first of all, go buy the book or download the book and listen to it or whatever. If you like what's being spoken about, then go and implement it and either try and figure it out yourself or go speak to someone like Craig or Katie that can help you implement it, because that's what they do. I mean, for me, it was a no-brainer. I knew that it was going to take me 10 times longer to try and figure it out myself, and I'm extremely impatient. So I just said, no, I'm willing to pay Craig to come and do it for me. I'm glad I did because he's fast-tracked it. If that's not you, then fine, go figure it out yourself. It doesn't really matter how you do it, just freaking well do it, right? So, like, information's not power; it's the implementation of that information that's power. So just go get it done.
I couldn't agree more. 100%. People can implement, get it done, and you'll be better off than where you were when you didn't do it. 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, all right, what are we talking about here today, Craig, with this profit first optimization?
Yeah, I think it's what you just sort of touched upon and alluded there. It's, well, people out there implementing profit first. At the end of the day, they've set up a system of profit first, which is a multiple bank account system to be able to manage your cash flow within your business. And, within profit first, where you're generally talking about 5 sort of core accounts, but, with the many different implementations, again, profit first is a great framework and a model and a methodology, which helps people start to think more behaviorally about their money and then put things in place to help support that, to help them with their financial decision making. And what profit first does great is it helps people in the here and now. It's that part of their going, once people start to understand it and they've read the book and they're starting to implement, they're opening up a few of the bank accounts, they're starting to see, well, actually, I do have more clarity. It is actually more simple of me understanding my finances, even though I've got more bank accounts. And usually what happens when people first implement it, it's kind of twofold. The first thing is I tend to find is that we put money aside for tax and government obligations. I generally tend to call them. It's the general tax, the GST, and the superannuation and these sorts of things. We're having to pay the ATO or the super funds, these amounts on a quarterly or monthly basis, and then to have a separate bank account where we've got money aside going into those, and anytime I get one of those notices, I can pay that off. Profit First has that great ability to go, awesome, cool, I feel safe, I feel secure, I've got money put aside for those things. So I don't have the stress of that hanging over me. So therefore, I can now focus on the other cool things I need to do in my business. So that's one of the first things we see with Profit First. The other part is also that notion of seeing the profit, what it's all based upon, build on. It's taking profit and seeing it clearly. Okay, I'm getting the reward for all those late nights, the hard work, all the time, money, energy that I've invested in creating this awesome business, but I am getting a return on that. The same as if I invest with, if I spend time investing in shares in big corporations and all the rest of it, I want to get a return on that. So we should be doing the same with our business. And so they're the first two things we generally get from Profit First, which generally helps us in the here and now. But what I found as I implemented Profit First myself and with countless business owners was that people would start to feel that safety, that security, and going, awesome, good. I feel as though I understand my financials more than I ever have before. And that's without having to go in and look at my profit and loss and be in my zero account and the like. But then the question would always be, but what next? So can I put a new staff member on? What happens if? What happens if I spend this money over here? What happens if
there's a pandemic?
That really brought the microscope in on it, 100%. But it was happening before then. So I've been implementing Profit First with clients for 4 or 5 years now, and it was 100% from day one. But yes, all the pandemic's done is put a big microscope on things and fast track a lot of things where people needed to know those things here and now, and for what was going to happen tomorrow or next week. What if I make this decision here and now? Whereas though before the pandemic, I was sitting there talking about, what are we going to do in a month's time, 2 months' time, 3 months' time? When the pandemic hit, we'll get to a little bit more, but we created a Cashflow tool for Profit First that we were in that tool daily with clients because the goalposts would change. Sometimes hourly when all the different things were happening. And so therefore being able to then paint that picture of the what ifs, what about, what can I do? What can't I do? What's the implications? What's the impact that might have? For me is really the next step and the next layer for, in fairness, any financial projection and any, business owner that wants to grow or wants their business to achieve something, whatever that is for them, is knowing, well, if I do this with my best guess at this point in time, because nobody has the crystal ball, but based upon these assumptions that I'm going to make, if I do this, how much money will I have in a bank account? And in a Profit First Lord, how much money will I have in any of the bank accounts? And so now I can start to say, awesome, in my tax account, when I get to year end and when I've got to pay that tax bill, awesome, I can see I'm going to have that enough money that's in there based upon, the percentage allocations that I'm putting across my different accounts.
Sure.
If I want to be recruiting, do I have a staff bank account or a growth account or whatever it is that I can then build up to a certain amount to put that money aside for that? Or if I've got this opportunity that's arisen, well, how much is it going to cost me? When am I going to need to pay that cash out? Which bucket of money does that come out of? It comes out of my operating expenses. Awesome. If I do go do that, what's the impact? Well, what does my return on investment need to be? So all these things start to help business owners talk through and work through what a traditional accountant, and I'll put in inverted commas here, traditional accountant will try to help people with if they do go down this level. But they'll try to do it by looking at 5 different financial reports. But we're in a position where we can sort of do some of these forecasts by just looking at what our bank accounts say. And the other thing, it really deals with our pricing of our services or our product as well, of saying, well, what's the return I need to get in on that for a future state? Well, if I'm going to get that money in, well, I know some of it's going in my profit account. I know some is going inside for the tax. So therefore, I need to get this X amount of return on investment. Otherwise, I can't continue on. And being able to show that in black and white numbers and in numbers that can be very relatable for a business owner, being what does that bank account look like in 1 month's time, 3 months' time, 12 months' time, if I do this and if I get this amount of revenue in. And so, that's where I believe the next sort of level of evolution in a Profit First implementation sort of starts to go to that.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I agree with that. If you guys out there that have read the book, or you hopefully will go now read the book anyway, as Craig alluded to, essentially what it does is help you set up a number of different buckets for your business, which are bank accounts, which you can, have different money allocations, put in different accounts for different things. So it might be materials, equipment, it might be, staff or contractors or whatever it is, right? Tax, big one. And obviously your owner's pay, the profit, which is the main thing, like making sure you're putting money into profit. And in truth, you could probably go and set up a spreadsheet and do that on your own. But what Craig's talking about, which gets a little bit more complex, is where the whole forecasting side of it comes into play, and like the how to optimize what that asset which you've currently got to predict, through a glass ball, what might be happening in 2, 4, 6, 12, 24 months down the track. So the tools that I've seen, because I have set up for myself, are quite helpful in understanding. Okay, well, if we keep on track this way, within 6 months we're going to be here, which means we'll have this much in this account, and blah 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 blah. Alternatively, if we add this 5% margin to our sales, for example, then this is where we'll be at. And it sort of just brings a lot of clarity into that side of the business, which is something that I never had before. I was kind of just guessing it until I had a detailed understanding. The pros of that, I find, are it's quite rewarding when you can look at something like that and go, oh, all I've got to do is this to have that. Like, it really, where you kind of break that bigger picture number down into little actionable goals. Oh, you mean I've only got to sell 2 more jobs a week to have this? Like, bang, it could be $1 million. Like, it really makes it a lot. It's kind of a satisfying, rewarding observation when you realize that you don't actually need to be doing these. Like, sometimes we think these big picture goals are like just such a huge amount of work, when the reality is they're just little positive habits and actions that you do consistently, which result to this, that lead up to this big, this big goal, which is, I think, quite a revelation.
Yeah, you're spot on the mark there, Matt. And it's that what I've found, and it's what you're alluding to there. It just makes it far more tangible. You can sit there and you can go, and you touch upon the owner's pay bank account that we set up and we put aside, and it's that notion at the end of the day, what do we all get into business for? At the end of the day, we want to be able to, earn a certain amount of money and achieve certain things, have certain impact, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, we need a certain amount of dollars in our pocket to be able to do whatever that is. And to be able to see a separate bank account that says, well, I'm currently paying myself X amount of dollars. And the tangible part of, if I bring X amount of revenue on and with my current resources, then, okay, cool. That's going to bring more money into my bank account for my owner's pay. Therefore, I can incrementally increase how much I'm paying myself sustainably. And even to the point of working backwards, well, let's reverse engineer things. Well, at the end of the day, what do I need to, many business owners, they often say, I want to have $100,000 or $200,000 cash in the bank from my pay that I get. Well, awesome. If that's my target and my goal, and I'm not actually paying myself that amount yet, well, number one, by looking at our percentages and the forward projections, it can also be, well, what's the total revenue of the business need to be? Quite often, we either underestimate or we overestimate what does our revenue need to be, because we don't factor in all those other parts that we've talked about. It's the staff, it's the resources, it's the tax, it's all those sorts of things. But it's knowing, well, depending on what the structure of your business is, to earn $100,000 cash, $200,000 cash, I might have to have $500,000 business, a $1 million business, whatever it needs to be. Now I can more clearly see what my targets are, and therefore what's the incremental steps that I need to make to be able to get there, which, as you say, you can often see that it doesn't need to be this big drastic change that we need to do. It's just that continual, that's why I use the word optimization. It's the continual tweaking, continually optimizing, and just working on the little things. And that's why I probably first, I can help do it from a behavioral sense of the 1%ers. And, you've seen it yourself. It's the couple of 1%ers here and there that over time, it just compounds, and the time value of that compounding.
I mean, the beauty of having your own business and running your own business is that we don't have to have a salary cap, and like having a framework like this in place can really help communicate that. Like, if you want to make more money, this is a framework, this is a game plan to help you do it, right? Like, you can't just go and say, well, you know what, I want to pay myself more, so I'm just not going to pay tax next month. Like, that doesn't work. Like, you've got to do it the right way. Trust me, I've been and done that. I had tax bills I had to pay off for years when I got started in business because I had no idea about money. But like, the point being, they're running your own business is rewarding. And I had this conversation last night with a mate of mine at the gym, because he was saying, oh man, like, stuff that, I don't know how you guys run businesses. Like, I just show up to work and I do my thing. And I'm like, yeah, but you can't give yourself a pay rise. And he's like, yeah, that's true, but like, I make good money. I'm like, okay, man, whatever. Like, like, as business owners, like, we have the ability. If we want to make more money, we can make more money, and but you've got to do it the right way. And you can't just go, like, it's irresponsible as a business owner and especially when you get to the point where you've got people that are dependent on you, be that family or be that staff, you've got to do things the right way. And so there are tools out there that can help you do this. And this is, without a doubt, probably the best one that I've ever seen when it comes to managing your finances. And so some of those things that you can optimize and you can forecast, obviously, like Craig alluded to, first and foremost, understanding what sort of funds you're allocating into what sort of account. So that's done on a percentage value, which is specific to your business. And this is where it kind of gets tricky. Like, you can go read the book and you can run off percentages in the book, but in truth, it doesn't always correlate. And it certainly didn't for me. And so, Craig had to sort of customize that to suit my business, which was very powerful. And since he did that, it made a lot more sense. But then beyond that, you can kind of look forward and say, okay, well, we're predicting this much growth in the business. That's great. Like, at what point, and this is something that we're going to, Craig and I are going to be working on next, is, well, like, we've got these, recruitment schedules and stuff within the business now, which we've been developing, which tells us what positions we need to hire for next. But the thing what I've got to figure out at the moment is, well, at what point can the business actually afford it? And so, these are the things that you need to get some clarity around within your own organizations. Like, there's no point. It's all good sometimes saying, oh, I want to get off the tools, or I want to get my goal for the next year is to hire a new, plumber, or hire a new Sparky, or whatever it is, or get another truck on the road, blah, blah, blah. That's great. But you got to get a really defined understanding of what that actually looks like from a financial perspective, or you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. And there are sometimes just these small things that in most cases, there are these small things that get missed, which can really, be a defining moment in that being a shit decision for your business. So,
it all comes down to those fine margins. And again, as you've alluded to many times, Matt, it's that understanding the data in a way that works for you makes all the difference, because you can come back to that and go, okay, cool. Here's what I believe is going to happen, and here's why I feel comfortable bringing on that plumber and the Sparky, whoever it is. Here's the assumptions I made. I can put those assumptions into a forecast of, okay, well, here's when they're going to come on. Here's where they're going to be making the money. Here's what the rate's going to be. Here's the extra truck I need on the road to be able to do that. And factoring all those things in, then you're able to say, okay, cool. Is it sustainable for me to do that? Or it may make you rethink, well, actually, is my pricing right? Because I can't actually sustain that at the moment. What do you need if I'm going to have a bigger team? Therefore, I've got a few more overheads. So what's the infrastructure I need around to support this? Are my margins right? And these are all those things that then start to, play into that mix of, yes, as your business gets bigger, you do need more infrastructure. And so therefore, from those percentage terms, we are putting a little bit more money aside to cover the infrastructure as business gets bigger. But as the business grows, and as business owners, we're moving out of the doing and into the more of the strategic piece, and a lot of the systems and the process and the stuff that you're great at, Matt. When you're getting to that level, like you are, it's that part of, well, business is growing. How do you then position that to then go, well, how does that relate down to all these different buckets that I'm going to have to support that growth? And as you continually say, it's the two pieces around the optimization and what's sustainable. And, you need to know those numbers, and you need to get a comfort level or confidence. Otherwise you're gambling at the end of the day. It's the same as me going down to the racetrack or the Keno and just throwing a thing because you're like, oh, that number came up last time, so I'm going to go that number this time. And that's literally what people do with their businesses, but they think it's different because they think, no, I know what I'm doing, but they're not grounding it in, okay, cool, I know my bank account's going to be, if I hit consistent revenue that I'm hitting and we keep on getting the amount of money in that we've been getting, okay, cool. Here's what the numbers need to be, and the numbers, need to back that up. Otherwise, you are literally just guessing, and you're guessing and hoping, which if you're wanting to design a business and design a lifestyle, which is what a lot of us get into business, it's a certain type of lifestyle that we're wanting as a business owner. And it's the friend that has to ask the boss for a pay rise or ask the boss if they can have a day off and all the rest of it. We're designing a lifestyle where we get to choose all those things. So therefore, we should also choose what are the things and what are the numbers need to be for us to be able to achieve whatever that lifestyle is.
I want to as well Craig, while we're talking about like on the topic of forecasting, like address the difference between like budgeting and forecasting, because I feel like for a lot of like people out there that might be watching this, they'd be like, oh, well, we already have a budget. My accountant does it. But the problem is I found with budgeting, and I find with budgeting, is that budgeting kind of speaks to the now, and it doesn't really take into consideration, looking forward, all of like these things that you've got sitting in your forecasted pipeline, and in terms of things that are happening within the business, so on and so forth. And so I've always had a bit of an issue with budgeting because I feel like it's the after. Even though it's not, you're going to be budgeting for the future. I always find like it's kind of based on, like it's not a real accurate like picture of like what you actually have from a strategic level. You're writing something down, so I feel like I've hit the nail on the head. Either you're taking notes or you're writing, or you're about to drop a gold nugget on us.
Yeah, I love it. I love it because it's something that I've been working through conceptually a bit myself. So my background is the core things I used to do is create budgets for $100 million businesses at the end of the day. And that was the core of what my background was.
You probably work with a lot of our listeners then.
Yeah, exactly. And, I spent years doing budgets. And again, you have similar commentary to some of the things that you've sort of touched upon there. And even now, when I first started doing Profit First, I went fully away from that world of budgeting because it was, I can do Profit First, I can do forecasting, and I can manage my business without looking at zero. I literally for a bunch of time there, not looking at zero, apart from do a quick little reconciliation, but I was just living in my cash flow forecast sheet and tool and the like. But there's also been an evolution in some of my thinking, and we do budgeting with clients as well, but they are separate. They are two different things. They do work independently, but they are very much correlated. And it's a bit of a fine point, and I guess it's the nuances of language, but the reality is budget in small business world is, number one, I first came out and started, I did a budget, and I think I was one of 3 people I knew that did a budget in small business at the time, like nobody does budgets. And it's clear, I think there's a bit of a negative connotation with the word budget in as much as it does have this idea that it's just stale. It's something I put in, and it's quite often a process that many business owners haven't been involved in. It's 100% what you just said there before. It's my accountants give me a budget, and therefore it's a budget that sits on a tool that's meaningless to me. They're trying to get me to look at a profit and loss report over here, and they put numbers in. I have no idea where the numbers come from. And so they haven't been involved in the process. And so that's where, for me, you can call it whatever you like. For me, I still sort of use the budget word, but it's more about having a profit plan. It's a profitable plan. And the thing with a budget is, in small business, it can be movable or changeable. And a lot of the time people think of a budget, it's a 12-month thing we're putting in the start of the financial year, and it doesn't change. So you can have that type of a budget, but a forecast 100% is, like you just sort of said, it is more we're in it more day to day. Yeah, it's far more agile and the like. But I guess this is where a well-run budget process that involves a business owner is a brilliant process, because it actually does get people thinking past the 6 months, past the 12 months, past the 18 months, which in reality, that's one of the hardest things for a small business. You start, you get so caught in the doing in the business so much, it can be really hard to drag yourself out of that and think past the next sale I need to get in next week. What's your 6 month look? What's your 12 month look like? But the reality is, the business that truly succeed is where the business owners are thinking the 12, 18 months, 2 years down the track to hit the goals and targets and aims that they're trying to achieve, but then breaking them back down into the smaller steps. So a well-run budget setting process can have a whole lot of value, but they need to be, but that's what I talk about these days. It's very much they're going hand in hand. So we're talking about the budget's there. We did set these goals, but if your business changes tomorrow, and we're similar to conversations we've had in the past, that okay, cool, we're going to be doing a bit of a tweak, a bit of a change in the business. And it's like, okay, well, that budget really no longer applies. So let's update or change that budget based upon what's the new direction of the business. And that's the part with, I think, traditional budgeting. That's kind of the set and forget notion and idea of that. Because again, what gets measured, is what actually ends up happening. I've forgotten the nice little quote there.
What is it?
What gets measured gets managed, or,
what gets managed gets measured.
Well, the other way around, yeah. I knew I had that wrong somehow. And that's why a budget is good. And to myself, I've gone back to doing a budget, and I know it's made me far more focused on certain things. Still do my cash flow forecast. And then we hit to a point where our business changed, over the last couple of months with my wife coming into the business, and we've got new offerings. So it's like, well, that budget doesn't apply anymore. And what our projections are telling us, because there's actually quite a bit of difference between what we did put in for a budget and what our forecast now is, then it's like, hang on a second, that budget needs to be updated. Aligning, and the secondary part of that is very much with profit first as well, to make sure that they align. At the end of the day, we're going to have certain target percentages that we're going to have from a profit first related business. So therefore, there's no point having a budget that sits over here that tells me I'm going to have a profit that says this, but it doesn't match what my profit percentage that we're going to be putting the cash aside for. And so the way we budget for a profit first business, for me, is different to the way I budget for a normal business. But again, I don't work with those other people that don't do profit first these days, so I don't have to worry about that. And we very much create like a cash budget, to be able to do that. So it's just, for me, it is, they're similar. There is a difference, but again, it is still all having a look at what is the future projection and what is the plan. So it's kind of a few different terms there. It's sort of just tweaking how we think about it, which again, from a profit first point of view, it's a very behavioral approach. So if budget doesn't work for people, then let's use what's the plan, what's the whatever, and let's put some numbers around that plan and put those numbers into a zero, so you can at least go, oh yeah, did we hit that? Can I be driven to be able to do that?
And that's something I think for you guys out there, if that does relate to, I mean, that was my situation. I had the budget stuff set up in Xero, and I just, in truth, it was so stagnant in the sense that you just set it and forget it, and you never revisit it. And it never worked for me because it was sort of more of a wish than an actual strategy. Whereas I find with the cash flow forecasting, I don't even in truth have a budget anymore. I don't bother looking at it. I'm sure it's probably sitting there, much to my accountant's dismay. But the cash flow forecast is so much more valuable to me because I'm in it all the time. It's constantly being, as Craig says, optimise, which essentially means it's being updated. You're always in there. You're always updating it. Well, you should be. We're not going to go into that. But it just brings things front and centre for you, and it casts a lot better perspective as to what those outputs are going to look like at a given point in time, 1 month, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever down the track, based on actual numbers and actual targets that you're trying to hit within the business in terms of sales or cash flow generation or team members, blah, 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 whatever it might be, right? So if that does relate to you guys, then I encourage you to go check out cash flow forecasting because it's, in my opinion, it was far more valuable for me. But like Craig says, maybe I'll really come to a point where I'm like, okay, well, now I know enough about this that I can actually create a budget that's actually useful. So,
yeah, 100%. It is very much, and that's what I'd say. The process for me is 100% get profit first, set up, get the bank accounts working for you. That simplifies your finances. The next step is start doing your forecasting. For me, that's the next step. Get that down pat, get really comfortable with that, seeing where that is. And then the next layer on that is, cool, if you want to then go to the next level, the next layer of it, it is the budgeting, it is the forecast, and marrying the two of those, which again can very much be two parts. It can be the stage of business or it can be the size of business as well. So there are two things that can impact the timing of when you might want to look at each of those kind of three stages, because if you're starting to give staff responsibility for certain aspects of the finances and the measurements and the metrics and those sorts of things, and you want to make them tangible by tying them back to dollars and the like, then that becomes a layer where budgets can be useful, because again, you can use certain parts to show certain parts of budgets and the like, where you might not be at a stage where you want your staff to be seeing the actual physical cash. We've got some people that are happy for them to see what certain bank accounts are sitting at and going, hey, you can operate with certain bank accounts. And again, it's a way that you can then start to bring in team.
On that note, I suppose we're going to come back with a final episode and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about team. We're going to talk about how to create a people plan. And I suppose importantly, understanding this whole conversation around cash flow forecasting is really important before we have that conversation around people plan. So if you guys have watched this, that's great. Stay tuned for the next one, because it's certainly going to come full circle when we start talking about, the power of creating a profit and people plan using that profit first framework. So are you happy to wrap this one up, Craig?
Yeah, for sure. I think you've hit the nail on the head where we've talked about today and on our previous chat, some of the tools that we use, and then it is wrapping it up into the bigger picture side of things as well.
Awesome. Guys, if you want to get hold of Craig, his website's thehealthybusinesslab.com. It's thehealthybusinesslab.com. Again, all these links and stuff will be in the show notes, so you can head across there. Just head across to the siteshed.com, type in Craig, and you'll be able to find all of his podcasts. He's also in the Facebook group, so if you've got any questions, when you see this come through, you can ask in there. I imagine that a few of you will have questions, and it's always a good place to have those conversations, because you'll get some feedback from multiple levels of experience, people that have used it. So if you're not in that Facebook group, head across to Facebook and search the Site Shed, like the page, join the group, and you can be part of the conversations in there. Craig, let's wrap this one up. We're going to come back with the third and final episode, and we will go from there. Thank you. That's a wrap. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to the siteshed.com, where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.